Hi, it's Dr. Laura with Connect My Brain. Thanks so much for tuning in to the podcast today. And we have a very special guest. I'm so excited for my audience to hear from Dr. Ben Edwards. He has a podcast too, and he's going to tell you all about his stuff as we move along. But this is going to be a conversation. Here's two different worlds professionally. I'm a chiropractor, he's a medical doctor, and we both share the innate wisdom of the human body. So welcome, Dr. Edwards. We're so glad to have you here.
Hey, so happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation, Dr. Hansen.
Absolutely. So we were just talking before we got started, and we really do share a lot of the wonderfulness of the human body. And I would just love for you to share with my audience your perspective as an MD and how you were trained and what have you learned over the course of your professional life, and what do you see happening today?
Yeah. Well, my training is as a medical doctor, as you said. So that's a very conventional mindset, which I came from a long line of MDs. Both my granddads were MDs in the little town where I grew up, and two uncles that are MDs, a great-great-granddad MD. So I'm just allopathic MD only. That's all I knew. I didn't know about chiropractors. Literally didn't know anything about them in college and med school. I'd never been to one, never heard of one, never talked to anybody who'd been to one. I mean, my family just didn't do anything out of the just allopathic. So I didn't know about alternative anything, holistic anything. Didn't know about nutrition either. Doctors aren't trained in nutrition. 80% of medical schools do zero nutrition lectures. Wow. My school, UT Houston, which is a great school, the Texas Medical Center. It's a multi-acre center, two medical schools, Baylor College of Medicine, University of Texas, Houston Medical School, a nursing school there, a dental school, pharmacy school, tons of hospitals, MD Anderson Cancer Hospitals there. So it was a great institution to learn a very specific way of doing medicine. So my training was just that, very, very narrow. Now looking back, I see was narrow. But going into that, my thought was, I mean, this is one of the best schools there is. MD Anderson's one of the best cancer hospitals. I mean, I'm going to learn all there is to know. To go out to, my dream job was go to a small town, be a small town country doctor, kind of, so to speak, like my granddads were. They took care of the whole family. They delivered babies, did house calls, did surgeries, took care of you from cradle to grave. They're those old school GPs. Well, that was my goal. That's what I wanted to do. So go to med school, go to residency, and then go out to West Texas in a little tiny community out there. And I was the only doctor in the county, and I was doing what I was trained to do. Again, not knowing, total ignorant, but I thought I'd learned it all. And what I learned was a prescription pad, write a pharmaceutical prescription for your symptom, which I thought all these symptoms were diseases. And I thought these diseases came from who knows where. In med school, they call it unknown etiology is the terminology. It just means we don't know what causes this. We don't know what causes high blood pressure. We don't know what causes diabetes. We don't know what causes autoimmune disease. We don't know what causes cancer. So there was this unknown etiology thing. And then there are some theories like the gene theory. All these diseases are just coming through my genetics, through my family line. So either they just kind of come from nowhere, we don't know what, or from our genes, basically meaning we're victims. There's nothing we can do about this. If you get diabetes, you get it. I mean, the American Diabetes Association's own website says type 2 diabetes is not a choice. It's a chronic progressive disease. Now, these are quotes from a few years ago. I haven't looked lately. But basically, the point of the American Diabetes Association website was if you get this disease, you'll have it forever. You can manage for a little bit with food and diet and exercise, but you'll need medication. And then after a while, you'll need insulin. It just lays out this progressive course, chronic progressive disease. Okay, so that's what I just thought. Everything was like this. Everything just, you get these random diseases for who knows what reason or your genetics, and we just have pharmaceuticals to treat the diseases. And I'm kind of spending a minute here because to drive this point home, this is how doctors are trained. I had a little old lady come, this is years ago. So after 7 years of conventional medicine, I learned nutrition matters and other things matter. And so I shifted to more holistic, and that was 13 years ago. But before the shift, I'm down in this little county clinic, only doctor in the county. I'm doing house calls. I'm covering the nursing home, the Friday night football game team doctor, the county jail, the juvenile detention center, all that, just living my dream. And seeing 40 to 50 patients a day. The only way to do that is 7-minute visits. All you can do in a 7-minute visit is treat a symptom. So I had a little old lady come in on a Friday afternoon. She did not have an appointment. It was late in the afternoon. I needed to get to the football game. So a walk-in, unannounced walk-in with chest pain. So I was a little frustrated, even though I didn't show it. You know, I'm sweet and kind. I'm a Christian. I try to love my neighbor. But on the inside, I'm like, an old lady with chest pain with no appointment walking in on a Friday afternoon, it's going to be a heart attack. And this is going to take extra long. And I'm going to be late. And it's been a long week and, all that self-centered stuff. But, I'm a highly trained doctor. So right away, I started asking her a few questions. And the questions were related to the chest pain. I said, okay, ma'am, is this chest pain like a heaviness, like a pressure, a squeeze, a tight, like an elephant sitting on your chest, more on the left side kind of? And more kind of maybe going to your left arm, maybe up your left neck. It's worse when you do activity like carry in groceries or walk up some steps, and it's better if you sit down and relax. Is it associated with maybe you get a little sweaty and a little lightheaded and maybe short of breath? Is it that? Or is this chest pain more in the center of your chest and it radiates straight up your throat and it's more of a burning sensation? And it's worse when you lay down at night, and it's worse with spicy food, and it's better if you drink a little milk or take a Tums, because both those are chest pain. Mm-hmm. And she said that one, meaning the second one. So that's it. Real quick, that's 30 seconds. What I was trained to do in school, and all doctors are trained to do, is take the patient's symptoms that she's telling you or he's telling you and match the symptom to a label. So I labeled this lady reflux, acid reflux, gastroesophageal reflux disease, GERD. That was a label. Now the game's over. It's a matching game, game over. I matched it. Boom, I win. And so once we make the match, and you can do this with anything, headaches. Is it a tight band around the forehead that squeezes? Better with ibuprofen? That's a tension headache. Is it on one side only, like right behind your eye, like an ice pick, and light makes it worse, like bright lights and noise, better in a dark room? That's a migraine. Is it a under your eye pressure and associated with like snot, and when you bend over, it's worse, and if I push here, that's a sinus headache. Well, that's the matching game. You said headache. I got to just match you to one of those, because there's a pharmaceutical for migraines. There's a different pharmaceutical for tension headache, and there's a different one for sinus. And same with this lady's chest pain. So I matched her, game over, 30 seconds. I was so good at that game. That's why we were successful in that little town, because you can do 50 patients a day. That way you can make money. That county clinic had been losing money for 10 years. And they told me when they hired me, you got to turn this thing around. The taxpayers are tired of footing the bill. So we did that. So everybody was super happy. But back to the little old lady, I told her, all right, ma'am, as I'm writing the prescription for Nexium, 40 milligrams, one a day, number 30, 6 refills, put her name and her date of birth, rip it off, and I'm handing her the prescription. And she says, Doc, I don't want to take that. You're just treating my symptoms. And I bet your audience totally understands what that lady was talking about. But in the moment, I didn't know what she was talking about.
Wow.
I'm like, what? Treating symptoms? What do you mean? And she said, yeah, you're just treating my symptom. I want you to get to the root cause. And I'm like, what? No, I'm treating your disease. This is a disease, gastroesophageal reflux disease. D is for disease, GERD. This is your disease. And anyway, she just wouldn't go with it. And so I tried to scare her into it and said, ma'am, if you don't take this medicine, this acid in your esophagus, not only is it going to wake you up at night and hurt you, and you're going to be in pain and suffering, but you increase your risk for cancer of the esophagus when acid's in there the whole time, which is a true statement, because those cells aren't designed to see acid. Your stomach is, because it has a nice mucus layer to protect it. Anyways, tried to scare her into it. She wasn't buying it. She's like, nope, I'm not taking that. I don't want to take, you're treating my symptoms. So then I kind of went biblical on her and said, look, Adam and Eve, they sinned. They brought in death, disease, and dying into the earth. So, it's just the way it is. We live in a fallen world, and, lucky for you, God made doctors that are real smart and figured all this out and then figured out these medicines to help you feel better. And she wasn't buying that either. And so I finally just said, well, ma'am, there's only two options here. Option one, don't take this medicine and just suffer and maybe get cancer. Option two, take the medicine and don't suffer. But it's only that, only option one, option two, those are the only. And so this is the problem with physicians trained in America. And it's the reason we're in this healthcare crisis. We are trained very narrowly. A pharmaceutical or scalpel is the two options. Those are the two tools we have in our toolbox. That's it. And so we use scalpels and pharmaceuticals for everything. Well, there's not a chronic disease that I know of that's from a deficiency of any pharmaceutical or scalpel. So we're just not trained. It is absolutely mind-boggling when you really, like when doctors get this, they're just shocked. And it took me a while to get this, that I was just trained to treat a symptom. I wasn't trained for option three, fix it. And that's what that lady was asking me to do, is fix it. Well, doctors don't know how to fix it. Now, trauma surgery, excluding surgical stuff and mostly trauma related. Yeah, we're super good at that. But the top killers in America, heart disease, cancer, kidney disease, stroke, Alzheimer's, dementia, all that kind of stuff, chronic disease, 9 out of your top 10 killers directly related to food. And doctors get zero food education. $4.5 trillion a year we spend on quote unquote healthcare in this country, and 90% of those dollars are for chronic diseases. But doctors aren't trained to fix them. We're trained to treat the symptom. We're trained to manage asthma, manage hypertension, manage diabetes, manage everything. So management versus fix it. The analogy I give is my wife had a real slow leak, tiny little hole in her tire on her vehicle, and it was such a small hole, the air went out real slow. So it took about 5 days for it to get flat. Well, I had an air compressor and I just aired it up. She's good to go. She can get to her appointments and take the kids and do her things. And it was fine. Just slowly it would get flatter. And about the 4th, 5th day, I'd air it up again. No problem. And we just kept doing that. It was so easy, cheap. My copay covers it. Doesn't take any time. It's convenient, all that. And we don't think about the unintended long-term negative consequences of the cheap, convenient, quick fix thing, the treat a symptom thing. So like with her car, I didn't think about when that tire's getting a little lower every day, that's messing with the shocks and the struts. The alignment is getting off. The other tires are probably having to take more of the pressure. I increase her risk for a blowout and a rollover and a bad accident, all that. You didn't think about any of those long-term. I need the quick fix. The other example I give people, it's like if you went home this evening, sat down on your couch, watching TV, and all of a sudden smoke starts filling up your living room. Well, you could hop up real quick, open the front door, open the windows, turn the fans on, and get that smoke cleared out so you can see and you can breathe. And then it's like, just go sit back down on the couch and keep watching TV because you got the smoke cleared out. Obviously, if there's a fire in the kitchen, we need to it's fine to clear the smoke. It's fine to take the blood pressure pill, the acid reflux pill, the whatever pill to treat the emergencies. I do it all the time in my clinic. Someone walks in with a blood pressure 200 over 120. They're getting a prescription. But that takes 2 seconds to do that. That's easy medicine. But now I'm going to spend a little time talking about root causes. Why is that pressure high? And just doing this pill is not really decreasing your risk. And that's probably my biggest pet peeve. And we'll just talk heart disease because it's the number one killer. The number one killer in the United States and our number one treatment for it is a statin medication, which is for cholesterol. Yeah. Well, if people knew that these statin drugs decrease their risk of heart attack by 0.8%, wow, which is what the Journal of American College of Cardiology said in March of 22, they published a review study to see how effective are statins for heart attack reduction, stroke reduction, and all-cause mortality. And we're around 1%. Wow. So people are walking around with a false sense of security. I'm taking my pharmaceutical to reduce my chance of heart attack. Did they know that reduction's only 1%?
Mm,
No, they don't.
no.
And that's why we're in this mess. We're only treating symptoms. The long-term outcomes are very poor. The medication we're using to treat the symptoms has its own risk profile.
Yes.
The third leading cause of death in America, pharmaceuticals. It's just a total mess because the system got co-opted. About 1910, homeopathic medical schools were alive and well in this country in the late 1800s. 23 different homeopathic medical schools, naturopathic schools, osteopathic, allopathic, chiropractic, herbalist, naturopathic medical school, all these different varieties. And they narrowed it down and started licensing only allopathic. About 1910, the Flexner Report did this. And that was it. All these natural healing modalities were marginalized, were made illegal, and only MDs got licensed and MDs got trained with one curriculum, pharmaceutical. So it's been 110, 20 years, whatever it's been, 125. And it's a failed experiment. It just doesn't work. And the public they're waking up now, but doctors don't know. I did not know any of this. All the stuff I just told you, I didn't know coming out of school. I thought I was the best. I thought I was number one. And American doctors and their protocols we're last place. Our outcomes are actually the worst. We have the lowest life expectancy. We die younger than anybody. More of our babies die than anybody. The highest infant mortality. We have the highest chronic disease of anybody. A third of our kids have a chronic disease now. We take more pharmaceuticals than anybody, go to the doctor more than anybody, spend twice as much money on quote unquote healthcare to come in dead last place. I didn't know that either. So there's just so much that doctors are not trained in, are ignorant of, and aren't told the truth on long-term outcomes, and that our protocols get the worst outcomes. So I kind of forget the question. Hopefully that answered it.
What changed you? Like, what was the event that, I know it was the lady asking you to fix it.
Yeah.
When did you really, and what have you done differently now?
Yeah. So what did it for me interesting on what's called the evidence-based pyramid that doctors are trained, the highest form of evidence, randomized controlled trial, meta-analysis, but then down at the very bottom of the evidence pyramid, it barely even qualifies as evidence. And basically doctors are told, just ignore that. It's called anecdotal. Mm-hmm. Anecdotal just means grandma took ivermectin for COVID and she got better in a day. Oh, that's just an anecdotal story. We need a big randomized controlled trial to prove that wasn't just a coincidence in grandma, which I get it. I'm not anti-scientific method. The problem is a lot of the long-term studies are corrupted, co-opted. Who bought and paid for it? Is the data real? Did they massage that data, which they do? Did they just shelve that study if it didn't fit their wanted outcome? Anyways, that's another story. But anecdotal. So just one person getting better, that's what turned me. So that little old lady, that was before I knew anything in regards to the truth of the body can fix itself. That was years before. The Lord brought that memory back to me later. So what did it for me was my nurse practitioner in that old clinic down there, in that county clinic. And he was conventional minded. Also, his dad was a doctor. And that nurse prac had been diagnosed with celiac disease years before. And that's where if you eat gluten, wheat, you could have lots of symptoms, but his were mainly GI symptoms, bloody stool, abdominal pain and cramping, and fatigue, and just, feel horrible. So he eats gluten-free, and he'd been eating gluten-free forever. And he was strict. If a drug rep would bring a breakfast burrito to the clinic, he wouldn't just scrape the eggs off and eat the eggs. No, because those eggs touched that wheat. So cross-contamination, he couldn't eat anything that had touched wheat. He was real strict about it. Or he'd get sick immediately. He knew this. He'd been this way for years, gluten-free. Well, he goes one weekend with his wife to a bed and breakfast, a getaway, little mini 3-day long weekend vacation. He tells the lady at the bed and breakfast he needs a gluten-free pancake because he's celiac. And the lady did that. She said, "That's fine. I'll make that for you." But if you'd like to be cured of that, you go talk to this doctor over here. And my nurse prac did what you just did and what I did. I'm like, what? No, you don't cure celiac. And so he just said, okay, no, whatever. No, tried to blow it off and ignore her. And she just kept pestering him all weekend. And the problem was that doctor, his office was actually in the bed and breakfast building. And so it's like he had no reason to not. So he went and talked to the guy just to be polite. Well, that doctor convinced, whatever he said, so convinced my nurse practitioner that the body and the immune system, because autoimmune just means your immune system's out of balance. Part of it's decided to go into attack mode inappropriately, attacking your own self, and can be a reason for that. So the doctor convinced my nurse prac that potentially there's a trigger and a reason your immune system's out of balance. And he gave him some things to do. They were all natural. They weren't prescribing. It was basically dietary and some supplements, a lot of focus on gut microbiome, the bacteria in the gut, all that. My nurse prac got convinced to try it. He did. Over 3 to 4 months, he put these protocols into practice. He didn't tell me he was doing this. He didn't tell me anything about this. Now, I was noticing over these 3 to 4 months, my nurse prac just had this glow about his complexion was like better. And he was trimming up the kind of puffy, inflamed. He wasn't way overweight, but just, a little extra 10 pounds of puffiness. He had trimmed up, complexion good, his mood's good, his energy is good. He just has this, he's given off a vitality, healthy feel. And then he comes to me one day, Doc, I know it's going to be hard to believe, but I've been doing some things over the past 3 to 4 months, and I'm pretty sure I've cured myself of my celiac disease. And I laughed at him. Like, what is this, April Fool's today? And like, I kind of made fun of him a little bit, laughed at him, whatever. What are you talking about? You don't cure that. And he was like, no, I'm telling you, I think I can eat wheat and be fine. I'm like, what in the world are you talking about? And he went straight to the break room in our clinic, went back to the break room where a drug rep had brought some breakfast burritos, and he brought one back and he started chowing down on it right in front of me at the nurse's station. And then he went for lunch. He went to the local burger joint, got a burger, wheat bun. And then drug rep brought cookies that afternoon, and he ate these cookies. And so 3 glutens in one day. And I'm thinking, you're crazy. You're going to be so sick tomorrow. You're probably going to call in. I'm going to have to see your patients. And he came back the next day totally fine. And he stayed fine. That was a moment where I had to recognize it and try to figure something out in my head. What just happened? I mean, he's telling me he did some things to create this health. But in my mind, I'm thinking there's no way. So maybe God just miracle healed him. Maybe this is a one-off, or maybe it's a delayed reaction. He'll react in a week, or, something. And he's telling me, no, doc, no, I'm healed. And I'm seeing it with my own eyes. I know he's not lying. I mean, I'm watching him eat this stuff. He's not sick. He's fine. So I just was struggling at that moment, thinking really about my next celiac patient. I'm going to have a celiac patient come in someday again. And what am I going to do? Am I going to just give them the med school answer, eat gluten-free the rest of your life? Or am I going to give an option? Not just some big old sales pitch, snake oil, I can cure every disease. No, not arrogance and cocky, but just the option of, hey, here's what I know. Here's what UT Houston taught me. Here's what the American Medical Association, American Association of Family Practitioners, the GI Association, eat gluten-free. But there's this other option. I know nothing about it. It's just a one-off. It's an anecdotal. Who knows? It's just, I don't even know. But if you want to talk to my nurse prac and do whatever he did, that's up to you. It's all natural stuff. I don't think it's going to hurt you. That was a decision I had to make. Am I going to stick with one option, or am I going to give 2 options, let the patient choose? In my ethical, moral obligation, I felt like I had to at least say, hey, my nurse prac had that, and now he's symptom-free. Somehow he's in remission if you want to talk to him. That was it. That was the first step. But then I had to call that doctor, because this nurse prac is under my authority. If he's going to be doing stuff in that room under my license, I kind of have to know what he's doing.
Yeah.
I called that doctor up, like, who are you? And what are you doing? What kind of doctor are you? What kind of quackery? What kind of holistic hocus pocus? You doing crystals or whatever? And, doctors are just so arrogant, prideful, and we're so close-minded. But that doctor took my call. He was very polite, pretty aggressive too. And he just started coming at me with truth. And he was saying some stuff that just resonated with that part of me, that the truth will resonate with a part of us. It'll touch us, whether it's, hey, that just makes sense, or something about that, I just know that's right. That's that piece of us that can just resonate with truth. So that guy was saying stuff, and it was dinging with that truth part of me. I'd call that my spirit man. But then my intellectual man kicks in, and it's like, there is no way. There's no way what he's saying could be true. How is he right? How could that be right? And everyone, all the smart people at Harvard, Mayo, and Hopkins, and Duke, and UT Houston are all wrong. There is no way. So that part, you get into this cognitive dissonance of, man, this kind of makes sense, but there's no way. And how could this be? And back and forth. So we just kind of went back and forth on the telephone for a long time. And he would send me articles to read and videos to watch and conferences to go to and books to read. One big one was a stomach acid book by Jonathan Wright, where it just made such sense. A stomach acid, like in that little old lady, the normal pH in our stomach is a pH of 1 to 2. And battery acid is 1.5. So what that book that he recommended I read reminded me was, physiology, every physiology textbook has this. Normal human gastric pH 1 to 2. And when you're that acidic, that will trigger that valve to squeeze tight. The one between the stomach and the esophagus, it'll squeeze tight to keep all the acid down where it's supposed to be, where you don't get heartburn. So that lady's problem, actually, even though I told her 7 years before, I said, you're making too much stomach acid, you need Nexium. That was not the truth. She was actually not making enough stomach acid. She was still making some. Her pH, though, was probably a 4 or 5. Still acidic. Anything below 7 is acidic, but not acidic enough to get that valve to squeeze shut. So her valve was weak and popped open easily, and here it came. So what I should have done if I knew the truth was do things to encourage her stomach acid pumps to work better and to get that pH back down to a battery acid level, and then that valve would have squeezed shut. Her heartburn would have gone away. She would have been fine. So that was one book and one aha moment, and he would send me other things, but a big one was, he said, type 2 diabetes, totally reversible. And this was in 2011. I think probably a lot of people have heard about type 2 diabetes getting reversed now with keto, low carb, fasting, all that kind of stuff. But back then, it was like mind blowing. And I told him, there is no way. If that were true, UT Houston endocrinologist would have taught me that. If that were true, the doctors, the attending physicians in my residency program, who are great guys, super smart, love the Lord, they love the truth, they love people, they would have taught me that. So there's no way that what you just said could be true and make all them a liar. And he said, no, they're not liars. You're just ignorant. Because the American Diabetes Association says it's a chronic progressive disease, and all the doctors are trained in that system. That's just what they believe. So that's what they. And he said, just go Google this guy. It was an engineer on YouTube, reversed his diabetes. It wasn't even a doctor. And I watched that video that night, and I thought, oh my word, this guy reversed his diabetes. And that was another key moment in the journey, because half of Garza County, the county I was practicing in, was diabetic. The other half was going to be diabetic. And if you're diabetic, you just increase your risk of Alzheimer's, heart attack, stroke, and cancer, all these top killers. So just reversing diabetes, you lower your risk of all these diseases across the board. So that was huge. So, man, if we just learned that part, how to reverse diabetes, that would help people so much. But the final thing, because you just get into this, how can this be? And the normal human nature of, if this is true, what's this mean for my job? What's this mean for my paycheck? What does it mean for my reputation? What people think of me? I mean, all that's playing too.
Sure.
So it's a lot there. And so this guy was just kind of getting tired of me dragging my feet and going, and we were so successful. I didn't mention, not to brag, but because those 50 visits a day, 7-minute visits, the income was there for the county, the taxpayers, totally off the hook. We didn't need their money anymore. They were still being taxed. So the tax money was built up, $1 million in the tax account of the healthcare district. They built $1 million brand new clinic, and in 1 year paid off the bank note again. And a year after that, had the $1 million back again. So, I mean, a $1 million clinic paid for, $1 million in the bank. The Washington Post came and did a front page story from Washington, D.C. So, I mean, all that was there too. The town's happy. The board is happy. The taxpayers are happy. The Washington Post front page, we're famous. We got extra money. I'm getting a good bonus check. I mean, all that's in play. But still, this truth part. And so the final nail in the coffin for me to commit to the truth on this was when that doctor said, I'm tired of arguing with you. Send me your 10 sickest patients. I'll just show you. And he said the sickest of the sick, that you've referred them to every specialist. They've been sick for years. They've tried every pharmaceutical and every protocol and every surgery and everything, and they're not better. Like the worst lupus, the worst fibromyalgia, the worst diabetic, the worst whatever. And I had some really sick patients there that had been to all the specialists, and they all went and they all came back better. And most were all the way, like off their meds. No more diabetes, no more high blood pressure, no more acid reflux, no more fill in the blank. It was incredible. So these are my own patients. So I knew these people. I lived in this little town with them, went to church with them, saw them at the grocery store. I prescribed most of those medications they were on. I had referred them to all those specialists. So, I mean, these were anecdotal, but powerful. Like a 74-year-old man who was over 300 pounds on 9 medications. 3 of those were for diabetes, and his blood sugar was still creeping up despite 3 different meds. And I told him it's time for insulin because we couldn't get his sugar under control. He refused, said, I'm not doing any shots. I'll die. And he said, pretty much I'm ready to die because I can't do anything. My feet burn. I got neuropathy. I have no energy. I'm in my recliner all day, every day. I'm not living. I'm basically a dead man sitting here. So that's the state this guy was in. And I said, well, I met this doctor that really says there's no such thing as diseases. They're all consequences. And if you aren't born with it, you probably don't have to keep it. And you can get to the root cause of it. And anyways, that 74-year-old man was like, sign me up. He was willing to do whatever.
That's great.
So after 3 to 4 months, that guy came back, that patient came back. He had lost over 40 pounds. He was off all his meds and his blood sugar was totally normal. He wasn't diabetic anymore. He was out working in the garden with his grandkids, had his life back. And he came back to my office showing me the labs and to thank me for sending him to that doctor because he had his life back. So when those 10 people got well, that's it. I'm all in. And so that was about 13 years ago. Actually got fired because I told the board, hey, I've learned how to help people get to the root of it, but it takes 1 hour minimum, sometimes 2 hours for a visit instead of 7 minutes. And obviously the math's not going to work. If I do an hour, I can only see 7, 8, 9, 10 patients a day instead of 50. The money, we're going back in the red. We're going to lose money. I tried to make a way for it to work and it just wasn't going to work. So they fired me. So started Veritas Medical 13 years ago. And since then, we just continued to try to seek the truth and have discovered that the very foundational principles of nutrition, hydration, movement, instead of sitting all day, and peace instead of chronic stress. The body needs certain inputs and it'll function like a well-engineered machine. Your Ferrari will function if you give it everything the Ferrari engineer who built it told you to give it in the owner's manual, and don't put the wrong things in. Now, the human body is the same. Put the right inputs in. Don't put the wrong in. The difference between us and the Ferrari, you can put the wrong in, the wrong stuff. You can put high fructose corn syrup and seed oils and stress, and sit all day and toxins and microplastics and smoking, all of it. And it'll still function. Now, it'll start to break down and you'll have lots of smoke filling up in your living room, lots of symptoms, and your life will be decreased. The American lifespan is decreasing. So there are consequences to this lack of good stewardship, but the body's so resilient. It's amazing. And if you just make some little changes, start to back off on these inputs that are no good and start to increase the inputs that are beneficial, then suddenly, boom, health returns to the body. And the more the doctor can get out of the way and his arrogance and pride and intelligence, and I can sound horrible, but like anti-doctor, and I'm not, it's just a doctor needs to align with the natural healing modalities. And that's what all those other healthcare true healers were doing: homeopathy, naturopathy, chiropractic, herbalists, all those things that were around. They all came alongside and lined up with, in conjunction with, the native intelligence and healing capacity of the body. That was awesome. Allopathic just comes in and crushes a symptom. High blood sugar is a symptom. We can give you a pill to make you urinate out your sugar, so the blood sugar level's lower, but you didn't fix the carburetor. The carburetor is what should be burning that sugar, and your carburetor's not burning the sugar anymore. It's backing up in the fuel line, spilling into, so you got to fix the carburetor. No pill will do that. And that's the same across the board. Everything's rooted in inflammation. Inflammation's rooted in a carburetor, which is your mitochondria inside your cell. And the mitochondria's got to take fuel plus oxygen plus spark plug to create energy called ATP. And you create exhaust. That's a black smoke coming out your tailpipe. And the American carburetors are not being stewarded. So our miles per gallon are way down. Our black smoke out the tailpipe way up. That's inflammation. And you can Google cancer and inflammation, autoimmune and inflammation, autism and inflammation, depression and inflammation, heart attack, stroke and inflammation. And there's a connection with inflammation in every single disease. Alzheimer's, that's a brain on fire.
Yeah.
And the reason these things are on fire is because these inputs into our carburetor are not the right inputs. And so the body is amazingly designed. It'll fix itself. We get it with a paper cut. We get it with a broken bone. We don't worry about that. A paper cut's going to heal up. It's going to clot, heal, grow new skin. Nobody thinks twice about it. Well, that's all the way through your system.
The body does that.
The body will fix itself if you steward it, give it what it needs, and avoid what it doesn't.
Wow, this is just so wonderful to connect with a medical person that thinks the way that you do. But I'm going to shift gears on you. You've been talking on your podcast a lot, and I'm sure people have heard about this, but we had some outbreaks of measles. Mm-hmm. I think the vaccine issue is a big one.
Yeah.
And it bothers me that we can't talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, if you bring it up, it just creates tension.
Yep.
And I just don't think it should be that way. It's something that I think we have to look at.
Yeah.
But you've had some individualized experiences with some families, haven't you? That the
Yep.
child had measles.
Yes. So there was a group of Mennonites in a community about 90 miles south of my office in Lubbock, and I was asked to come down and evaluate some of the kids. After one little girl died, it turns out she died from pneumonia because she didn't get appropriate antibiotic treatment. But the siblings were sick with measles. The mom was real scared, didn't want to go back to the hospital. They called me. I went down there, made a house call, evaluated them, and ended up evaluating over 200 kids in the ensuing 3 days or so, or that next week. But anyway, so yeah, I learned a lot during that about how to treat measles. And also learned a few things, like most of the parents were actually vaccinated and pretty much none of the kids were. And so, of course, I'm curious as to why. And the consistent answer I got was, in our community in Gaines County, in the Mennonite community, there's 12 vaccine-injured children. And this community is very tight-knit, and they congregate a lot. They not just at church, but family gatherings, weddings. I mean, they're just a tight-knit community. Lots of kids. It seems like every family had 8 kids, but just really interrelated. So word spreads real fast. And the whole anecdotal thing that medicine and medical doctors don't really listen to. If a mama says, hey, baby Susie was meeting all her milestones, and at 18 months gets this routine round of shots, and she suddenly is not making eye contact and she quits talking and regresses into full-blown autism. That's just kind of a common sense, even though it's anecdotal. And we get in trouble by not listening to these mamas.
Yes.
It's a big problem. But the vaccine injury issue was an issue for sure. And I agree with you. We need to be able to speak about, and this is what I told every reporter that asked for an interview. I learned, at first I didn't really, but I learned to start giving them my answer on email. I'm not going to talk to you unless we can talk about all three things. Let's talk about prevention, pros and cons of prevention. Let's talk about treatment, and let's talk about hesitancy. Patients, there's some patients hesitant to do the prevention, the vaccine. There's some physicians and healthcare workers hesitant to do treatment. So this hesitancy thing's a big deal.
Yes.
We need to talk about all of it. Let's come to the table, a common sense, non-political, but we've been psychologically brainwashed, really. Doctors absolutely are not taught the truth in med school. I can testify to this because I went to med school and I've talked to a lot of physicians, and I'm not the only one coming out of the closet to say this. We're taught one thing in med school. Here's a CDC schedule, boom, 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 memorize it for the test, and then implement it in your clinic. Done. That's it.
That's it.
I never read a package insert. I didn't know what was in it. I didn't know the history of vaccines. Dr. Suzanne Humphries has a book called Dissolving Illusions, goes through all the history. I did not realize that there was a 99% drop in infant mortality from all these childhood infectious diseases like measles and whooping cough and all of them. A 98 to 99% drop from 1900 to 1950. Death from all these things went away. And the vaccines didn't come in until the late 50s, early 60s. But the drop happened before then. I didn't know that. Not a single pediatrician knows this unless they've gone and read Dr. Humphrey's book or some other source like that. I promise you, I'm talking pediatricians at the highest levels of our government, our healthcare institutions, our medical schools. I'm telling you, this is the truth. I've talked to them. I was one of them.
Changed after the Industrial Revolution.
When all the sanitation, nutrition, refrigeration, clean water, sewage treatment, all that, and Dean of Harvard Medical School and the head of the Infectious Disease Society of America, his name is Dr. Edward Cass. He looked at all this data. Mayo looked at all this data. Boston University, McKinley, husband-wife epidemiologist looked at all the data. Geyer, this is like 2010, American Journal of Pediatrics. He looked at all the data and published it. Hopkins researchers have looked at it. They've all concluded the same thing. It wasn't doctors and medical interventions like vaccines and antibiotics, especially the vaccines because they weren't even around. It was these other things. It was the terrain, as I like to say.
Yes.
The problem in modern time is our internal terrain is so messed up. So we're asking the wrong questions. Like on the measles thing, it's not, to me, whether you can prevent it, not prevent it. It's how can you build health in a body so you have long-term longevity, resiliency, and lifespan? Because what if you can prevent fill-in-the-blank thing early in life, but that prevention triggers something in the body so that you lose resiliency, lose health, you increase inflammation later in life, increase chronic disease, and you decrease lifespan. So we got to look at big picture, all-cause mortality. If SIDS deaths, sudden infant deaths, if they cluster around the 2, 4, 6 month visits where the shots are given, if they cluster there instead of evenly distributed throughout the year, we ought to time out and do a deep dive and look at that. Well, now there's 6 or 7 studies that show this clustering. Yes. But like you said, we're not even allowed to talk about it. And people have totally forgotten the fact that if we build our resiliency, we can get measles, chickenpox, and all the child, and we can overcome them. Yes. And there's evidence that shows when you do overcome them, it creates an immune system that's balanced and strong and you decrease your risk of cancer and heart attacks in the future. What's that have to do with your immune system? Well, cancer comes when a weak immune system can't kill it. And heart attacks are related to inflammation, related to an imbalanced immune system. Everything's related to inflammation and immune system.
Everything.
So that's why these kids that avoid the vaccines overcome childhood illnesses, studies show, have overall health that's better.
Yes.
So there's a lot to this story. Doctors
there
don't
is.
talk.
There's so much, but I've seen it personally because my kids have had chicken pox and I just kept them home.
Yeah.
And now they've got natural immunity. Yeah. And there's lots of evidence. Dr. Vera Schreibner, she's definitely an older resource, but she was one of the first ones that came out talking about that the illnesses occur in childhood because you're trying to build that immune system. And she totally said the same thing you just said, that these illnesses prevent certain things down the road. So I just think it's important that we look at the truth. I love how many times you've said the truth. That part is where we have to get to, rather than only perpetuating an industry. And my goodness, it's 2025. Why couldn't we have more information today than we even had 10, 20 years ago and make better decisions? Yeah. And healthcare today, I mean, I've been in practice for 30 years and I've seen many things happen, different age related. There were certain things that happened to a lot of the 12-year-olds. Then it became what happened to the 8-year-olds. And now all the toddlers who were exposed to the social blocking during COVID. And now the practice, we're getting more toddlers now than we've had in a very long time. And what are the complaints? Social delay, language delay, emotional dysregulation. And that was something that they already found 6 months into COVID, that this was really impacting the development of the child. Mm-hmm. I believe we're losing a generation of people. Yeah. And just the idea of so many kids today being labeled autistic, I just think that would raise a red flag for anybody. Don't you think that it's just too much?
Yeah. Well, you're talking way too much common sense language. And we've lost common sense, compassion, and keeping the patient first and actually listening to the patient. The original definition of evidence-based medicine was the best peer-reviewed published evidence in conjunction with the clinician's experience, in conjunction with patient values, and clinical experience trumps published data. Yes, just like absolutely. My clinical experience in the measles showed that budesonide, an inhaled steroid, works really good for the lung inflammation that this particular strain of measles was causing. Well, the ivory tower doctors were saying that's inappropriate. Well, they're saying that based off some intellectual evidence-based or lack thereof and no clinical experience at all. But clinical experience trumps the data, but patient values trump clinical experience. Yes. We've got to flip this thing back to where patients are number one. They're the boss. They're in charge. Yes. If they want to try something, especially if it's benign and safer than Tylenol, i.e. ivermectin, and when you have to bring a judge into a case to force a hospital to give ivermectin, and when he does and it rules in favor of the patient, 99% of them survive in that ICU. Yes. And when the judge rules negative, they can't have it, 99% of those patients go on to die. But we've just totally lost it's become politicized, and it just, in our culture in general, we're so adversarial.
Yes, we
and
are.
Prideful, and we can't confess when we get something wrong. We have a horrible time just saying, I screwed up, I got it wrong, I'm sorry, I confess. We can't do it. I mean, it's awful. And I think someone I interviewed recently on my podcast said, hey, it's like we're in the middle of, or maybe at the beginning of, how it was 40 years ago with tobacco, or however many years. Doctors used to recommend cigarettes. They'd be an advertisement saying, I recommend Camel, I recommend Marlboro. The evidence was there, but it was suppressed, manipulated, hidden, all that, and excuses made for 40 years. Oh. So we knew 40 years before this is killing people, and it took 40 years, and basically a generation of doctors need to die off for that truth to come out. And it's the same with these inoculations we're doing, these shots we're doing with kids. I believe the evidence is for sure there. There's neuroinflammation caused by aluminum that goes into the muscle and mercury. It's just the evidence is overwhelming. The doctors are ignorant of it because of the massive suppression, brainwashing, and manipulation. But we're finally moving through, I think we're almost critical mass because of the moms. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the millions of kids that have been damaged, our SIDS rates are higher than any country, but it's taken all this damage and death and disease. but it's breaking through finally. And hopefully we'll get to this point of just like with the cigarettes, where now it's just common, obvious. You ask anyone on the street, does smoking cigarettes damage your lung and maybe increase cancer? Well, of course it does. No doctor or just person would argue that. And we'll get to that point, I think, where, hey, if you inject a newborn with aluminum that inflames the brain, could that increase your risk of neurodevelopmental stuff? Well, yeah, obviously. It's like a common sense. I don't need, even though there are a ton of studies. So I hope we'll get there for the sake of the kids. I hope we get there sooner rather than later, but I think we are on that trajectory, but we'll see.
Well, I think what Bobby Kennedy is doing and really pushing the studies, I'm hoping that happens too. And again, it's not about being an anti-vaxxer. It's about there's something harming. There's so many of them. And you have so many children that are not going in the right direction. Could we just put a pause on, take a look, investigate? Because another great book is Turtles All the Way Down, and they go through all of the data. It's never been properly researched. So let's just put a pause button on and let's check it out.
Yeah.
And if we're wrong, we're wrong. But if we're correct, let's change it.
Yeah.
And your feelings of what you want to do are valued, and the feelings what I want to do are valued. And you should have your own personal decision in how you want to work your body.
Yep. Yeah. Now, the doctors that haven't read Turtles All the Way Down or Dissolving Illusion don't know the full data and aren't fully informed. Unfortunately, they think they are, but they're not. They would answer you and say, well, we'd have this massive wave of childhood death from all the germs if we put a pause on the vaccine schedule, which that would bring to the table, well, wait a minute, let's look back at the early 1900s, a 99% drop. That should trigger in your mind a question, well, how did that happen? How can we recreate that and create that healthy immune system? But also this whole conversation about treatment, no one even gets to that point. And I'm talking more integrative things.
Yes.
It's something as crazy as vitamin C. But there's so much data on intravenous and intramuscular high-dose vitamin C. Mm-hmm. That's just one thing. I mean, there are so many alternative, quote-unquote alternative, because they're natural and you can't patent them. But photobiomodulation is the scientific name, but UV light, red light therapies for immune system and germ killing. And you can do things in the body with light.
Yes.
There's 800 published studies just by Dr. Hamblin, much less all the other doctors on that subject. Ozone, which is O3, herbs, homeopathy. There's a whole world of treatment. Yes. Even if the germs look like they're going to overtake us, great, let's treat it. I mean, it's between a strong immune system and sprinkling a few treatments, which a strong immune system, you don't even really need the treatments. But fine, sprinkle in a little bit. And there's so much evidence on the treatments. And that's not even near having to come into the table of the conversation to bring that in. Well, so, yeah, there's so much.
We could just really sit here all day long and this is a great conversation. And I got to tell you, I feel so honored to have you with us today and share this information. And I know it's really going to make the difference in the lives of many, even if it's just that, hey, maybe I'll read the book about illusions or Turtles All the Way Down. Maybe I will take that next step and start to consider something different than what I've been doing. That's always been my thought to a parent is if what you're doing is working, stick with it. But if it's not, think of something new. And there are so many options out there. Well, tell everybody how they can find you.
Well, our website, Veritas, that's V as in Victor, ERITAS, that's Latin for truth. So veritaswellnessmember.com is the website. I think it's my name on Instagram, Dr. Ben Edwards, YouTube. I think it's Veritas Wellness, but it's all through our website. You can find the links to YouTube. Our podcast, You're the Cure. And then we have a virtual wellness program. People can jump on there and learn how to not be a standard American. They can order a blood panel through our program, and a wellness guide, a wellness navigator can guide them off the standard American road. on to the non-standard American road if people need guidance on nutrition, hydration, movement, and peace. That's what our wellness navigators do. And my goal is for those health coaches to be so busy and helping people so much, the medical clinic, which we do have in Lubbock, Texas, Veritas Medical, but the need for medical goes way, 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 way down. And that's what we're seeing over the last 2 years since we launched the wellness program. It's grown, it's robust, it's got a lot of testimonials coming out of people being healed, never seeing the medical side, the doctor.
Wow. Now, do you do telehealth?
We do for Texans, but across state lines, we just do the wellness stuff, which is all the health coaching, which again is getting to the root cause. All the doctor can really do is treat a symptom, which it's fine to do. I don't want people to feel condemned for treating a symptom, but it's a symptom treatment. It's clearing the smoke. And it's the wellness navigators who teach you how to get to the kitchen and put out the fire. So we do that across state lines and international lines. We have people from all over the world doing our wellness program.
Well, that is just wonderful. And you just have so much to contribute. And God has really brought you to a place. And you are a light, Dr. Edwards. And I am so glad that I had an opportunity to hear your podcast, but to also have you here and just hear everything about how you got to where you are now. It's just such a joy. So thank you so much for being on the podcast.
You're very welcome. It's an honor for me to be on here. I know you're touching a lot of lives, reaching a lot of people with the truth. So I love to obviously talk because I took the whole hour almost to answer one question, but I'm just passionate about the truth and people having an aha moment so they can not be a victim to this system that's not telling them the truth. So thank you for the opportunity to come on and share.
Well, that's my goal, is to build the community, the world. And if you didn't get anything at the, spelling the name or anything like that, feel free to go over to the website, connectmybrain.com, and you can send me a message and I'll make sure you have all the information you need. We'll also put his links in the show notes so that you can be sure and find Dr. Ben Edwards and Veritas Wellness. Thank you again for being with us.
You're welcome.